Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits Special Edition video. Another entry here based on one of my recent trips. This one I visited near a nearby town called Jarrell, Texas, as I was traveling to the Dallas Comic-Con just a couple of weeks back. It was very conveniently on the way, pretty much right there on the highway, right towards the Dallas area, so I decided to finally to pretty much pass off the interstate and then go see a memorial dedicated to what still is to this very day the most deadliest tornado outbreak in Texas, I believe, in the history of Texas altogether. And the reason why I'm including it here within the Ghosts and Spirits series is because there's one particular tornado that remains infamous with regards to the damage and the deadliness associated with it. I mean, we're talking about 28 fatalities or so, and anything involving, again, sudden death, especially with regards to a horrific way of dying. In this case, it merits talking about it because there's always the chance that there are residual hauntings there to this day. In fact, there's a memorial that I visited dedicated to this outbreak, and so I'm talking about what's considered the Central Texas tornado outbreak of 1997, but in particular, I'm going to talk about just one tornado, which was the F5. That's right, the F5 Jarrell tornado. So let's go ahead and I'll do just a brief history of the outbreak and of the tornado itself, and then at the end I'll showcase the pictures that I took of the memorial. So what was this tragic circumstance that occurred back in 97? Well, it was a series of tornadoes, if you can believe, 20 confirmed tornadoes that hit the Central Texas area back then. I barely remember anything involving this. I remember it was on the news for a good while, but being much younger, it was something that was not really registering at the time. But hearing now and then looking at the information related to it, I can see how much, like how huge this was even to this very day. 20 confirmed tornadoes. They pretty much all struck one fateful day, May 27th, 1997. You're looking at what is like a Doppler picture of sorts that showcases everything as far as those tornadoes. And what's pretty much interesting to note is not only did they produce 20 tornadoes, but they produced some of the most highly deadliest tornadoes of them all, including 3 F3 tornadoes, and I'm using the Fujita rating, which is used, I don't know if it's still used to this day, but at least back then it was utilized to indicate the deadliness, pretty much the damage of these tornadoes. So there was 3 F3 tornadoes, 1 F4 tornado, and then finally the F5 tornado itself, the one that hit that poor town in Jarrell, Texas. So these tornadoes, they pretty much cut a swath throughout the entire region there, in some cases literally wiping out entire estates, entire subdivisions off the face of the earth. And then that was it. It was just one fateful day where all this stuff happened. I remember at one point too there was like a severe I don't know if it was like a highway blockage of some sort, but there was a lot of people obviously like trying to get out of the way, and it created some kind of blockage, highway congestion, and fortunately many of those tornadoes never really went towards that location in terms of the highway congestion, but otherwise it would have been a lot more deadly. So let's talk about the infamous F5 Jarrell tornado. This one was a mammoth one. F5s are very rare. They're pretty much the maximum rating you can get within the Fujita scale, and it's there for a reason. They have the most powerful winds of them all, the most destructive winds, and they tend to cause the most horrible damage of them all too. This one was 3/4 of a mile wide, if you can believe it. Imagine if you were doing 60 miles an hour on a car, it would take almost a minute just to get across this tornado itself. And then it wasn't just in one spot for a short period. No, it lasted several hours, and in fact it stretched 7.6 miles in total length in terms of its distance. So 7.6 miles, that is humongous. Most tornadoes barely last a couple of minutes. In this case, this one was by far lasting for miles and for hours on end. And during its course of its track, unfortunately and fatefully, it came across an estate called the Double Creek Estates, which was a subdivision of Jarrell, Texas. There were 38 homes and then also some mobile homes there as well. But when it crossed paths with this subdivision, that was it. They were done for. And the way the story seemed to go, this tornado started off very tiny, like it was almost like really thin, and nothing in terms of what it would be shortly afterward. So there wasn't much, let's say, pandemonium at the beginning, or there wasn't much seriousness tied to it because it was just really, really thin. Like you would not have guessed that it would be an F5 tornado later on. But sure enough, a couple of minutes later, after it started getting, I guess, more momentum, that's when around 3:48 p.m. is the time period. That's when it struck the Double Creek Estates, and that's when it had its most powerful winds, its largest force, its F5 status, pretty much everything you're looking at pictures of here of the damage that it does to its home. Here's some of the reported noticed items or instances of damage that this thing created. I mean, this is humongous. Essentially, it created some of the most extreme ground scoring ever documented. Basically, it took like the homes that were well founded, like they had a strong foundation on them, not necessarily built to last through tornadoes, but definitely to last through high winds. It pretty much tore them off the foundation, and in some cases even tore the foundation itself. It also tore concrete from streets, if you can believe that. Like, it actually tore asphalt from the roads themselves. And then even then, it also tore grass, and then it tore dirt, and then it tore mud from the ground, like in those specific layers. It apparently took off 18 inches of ground anywhere that it left. I mean, how you have to think about that. You have to think about how damaging that is. If you can believe that, like all of a sudden the ground in that area was 18 inches less than before. That's how destructive this thing was. Dozens and dozens of vehicles were just blown about, considered completely unrecognizable after encountering this tornado. And then, of course, in the most tragic circumstance, it was the people within the Double Creek Estates. There were a total of, I think it was 27 fatalities within that specific subdivision. All the homes were completely destroyed, almost like it was like scorched ground type stuff, like nothing was left. And the damage to those people caught in the storm was so severe, because apparently if you're caught in a tornado, all those wind forces pulling people apart left and right, it's so strong that there was recovery teams apparently were having a very hard time distinguishing human remains, because their bodies were torn apart so badly and I guess pushed apart in so many pieces that it was just phenomenal, like the type of unheard of destructiveness that this thing had. So very, very tragic. It definitely lasted in terms of news for a good while after this. There was even one family, I think they were called the Mooring family, where there they were, very, very tragic circumstance, huddled within their home, and this tornado just completely took the house apart and took them with it. So very, very sad stuff. So as far as my trip now, I finally decided to go see this location in person and pay my tribute to it, and you're looking at the new pictures here. What's interesting about this is that this, I believe, location was the actual home where that family had their home before. That family, the five that lost everything. So what happened was the estate of that family, and I hope I'm saying this correctly. Someone, if it's incorrect, please state the correct thing on the comments below. But in order to ensure that this place could be remembered, the estate of that family, of that late tragic family, they converted that same land that had that home into this memorial park, and now it's both a memorial park and some kind of community center of some sort. Like, you could go there to this day, and as you're looking at the pictures here, you could have something occurring there. You could have a party happening there, you could have a festivity, you could have commemoration, whatever along the lines of that the building, and whatever use you can get obtained from it, it's yours to use. All, of course, in dedication to both the tornado, the F5 tornado that occurred there within the Double Creek Estates, and then also towards that family that lost everything essentially in there. And it was quite solemn to sit there. I mean, just basically stand around, very serene, very quiet when I was there, and imagine that on that fateful day in 1997, right where I was standing, right at that very location, one of the most powerful tornadoes in the history of the earth was passing by. I mean, when I was standing there, there was absolute silence. Obviously, like, birds could be heard chirping, and then there was some noise of some far off highway, but imagining the huge difference between the two, a complete silence on one end when I was there, and then back in 97 on that fateful day, you had a F5 tornado blaring through it. People, of course, have stated that tornadoes, the way they sound like a locomotive. They sound like a very, very loud machine of some sort. I can only imagine what that sounds like, but it was so weird to stand there and realize that at that very location, an F5 tornado, one of the most powerful ones ever recorded in history, was right there, was passing by. So and all around the area now, the estates have been rebuilt. There's homes everywhere. Very small subdivision, very quiet subdivision. Nothing like, let's say, living in the city. This is by far the suburbs to its degree, to the maximum degree. But it was at least very nice to go see this memorial park and then pay my tributes to it. So anyways, that is the video associated with my visit there towards that location. I didn't really go per se to try to do ghost hunting or try to capture any evidence. It was just merely ensuring that I could go see history, or where history occurred, in person, and at least, again, pay my respects to what had occurred back then. If anyone has gone there as well, please, it'd be interesting to hear what your experience was, or if anyone knows anyone from that time period, from the 97 tornado outbreak there in Central Texas. That would be really good to hear too. So, all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.